Can you all hear me well,
Hello.
though?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh,
Hello and
uh,
welcome to the Differently Able Network, sponsored by Ask Dr. Applewhite program. You know, it's so wonderful to be here this morning. So many people have been responding to this question, who is the differently abled applicant? So I hope that I can give you some really, really good pointers. You know, some of the things that you already know and that you can get resources. The resources are on the internet about what to ask and what not to ask in an interview setting for employers. And it's also it's also very, very wonderful that we have so many people that are interested in the differently abled applicant and what that really means. And so I'm going to give special thanks today for being able to produce this program, this meeting, this differently abled network meeting, to Rosalind Beeler, to Laurie Elwood, to Morgan Golock, and to Doug Reynolds, who work really hard to make sure that I stay on track for getting this out every month. So, what is the question of the month about? It's about learning when to speak, when to speak about your non-visible or your visible disability in an interview setting. And when I talk about non-visible disabilities, it's so important that people understand that we assume that people who we can't see their disability, that they're not dealing with their own challenges. And so I identify some of the things that are non-visible that require sometimes accommodations on the job. And I'll talk more about that later, but they run in the area of irritable bowel syndrome to ADHD to long-term COVID to mental health issues, depression and anxiety. So all of those things that we sometimes take for granted that someone is able-bodied and not dealing with the same thing that we're dealing with when we use a wheelchair or a mobility device and we have a visible disability. So today we'll be featuring the differently abled network meeting members. There's a membership for differently abled network, and the members come on and they have their comments, and I love it. I love it. I love people to talk about, to respond back to some of the things that we're talking about. We're going to have the voices from women and men veterans that are going to come on with Dr. Jane Garcia. We have the differently abled artists and musicians that will close our program, and they are going to talk about things about restoring hope and healing. So overall, we have a pretty good program today. So I wanted to just introduce myself. I'm Dr. Danita Applewhite, and I'm an Army veteran. I served at Fort Lee, Virginia, at the Quartermaster School as an instructor. I also am an educator and a certified rehabilitation counselor, retired now twice, but just can't stop working because I find so many underserved people out there, especially women and women veterans that are in need of resources and not able to access those resources for a number of reasons, most of the time because they don't know about them. And that's what I hope that I bring to the table, not only through this podcast, through this broadcast that we're doing, but also through your calling into White Apple Institute. I also served as the chair of the State Independent Living Council and co-chair, vice chair of State Rehabilitation Council. So I have a lot of experience over the years of talking about the differently abled applicant and who that really is and how we define that. You can also find any of our videos, you can find them on YouTube. Looking at search Ask Dr. Applewhite, and you should come up with all of the videos of the previous meetings that we've done. White Apple Institute is sponsored by Ask Dr. Applewhite, and the most important thing I want you to remember is I mentioned two things. I mentioned underserved and I mentioned women. And, you know, when I think about my sister veterans out there, my women, or other women out there that are suffering in shelters because of homelessness, um, that's the worst to me. And I want to make sure that, especially if they're trying to go to school and trying to maintain work, I want to make sure that they have the resources available to them. So, what we do with your donation, and this is what you can do, you can become a member, and I'll show you on the next slide here. You can become a member, you can become, you can volunteer your time, you can also subscribe to YouTube. Those are three ways that you can help us. And you'll find more information on our website at whiteappleinstitute.org. Well, what is a differently abled person? And what does that really mean? I'm a differently abled person. And I'm hoping that I can help people to follow in the same path that I've followed in. And I have helped many. And I praise God, my creator, our creator, for the ability to be able to do that. Um, I actually seek to become productive and a contributing citizen in the community. And I hope that I encourage others to do the same. Being differently abled means that we focus on what we can do versus what we can't do. And that and especially in interview settings, whether you're interviewing for a job or you're interviewing for a business opportunity, it's the same thing. You want to make sure that when you're introduced, you don't define yourself by your disability. And so many people do, unfortunately, when someone asks, what do you do? They shake the hand or whatever and nod and say, I'm disabled. And that's not an occupation. That's not what you do. And already you've identified yourself as disabled and falling to that label of disabled. And many times in society's viewpoint, that means that you're not capable of working or going to school or doing things that are very progressive in life. Thank goodness that over the years that we fought hard for disability justice, and many people have opened their eyes to what differently able is really all about. So overall, I've changed the perception, not the term itself, because we need to keep the term for insurance reasons, okay, as far as our disabilities are concerned. So we have to identify with our insurance providers, with our doctors, okay, a certain way. But we have changed our perception now, perception from disabled to differently abled for success in the workforce and if needed in higher education. So that's what a differently abled person looks like. And I mentioned a moment ago about what you can do to help. I just want to elaborate a little bit more on what your donation is used for. So if you make a donation today to whiteappleinstitute.org, we take that money, and that money is used, of course, for operating purposes, but most importantly, that we provide resources when someone is at a point where they have a major interview, a major exam, and their tire goes flat, and they don't have a support system. So we help with transportation expenses for minor car repairs. We also help with exam fees. Um, Sometimes people are offered a job and they need a uniform or shoes. We provide that with your donation and a number of other things. Technology, phones going out. We don't want people to lose hope. So we restore hope by restoring those little things. Wow, let's get to the question. Who is the differently abled applicant? The differently abled applicant is a person just like you, me, everybody can be a differently abled applicant. It makes no difference. It's just that you're applying for something, the word applicant in itself. And as you can see that I talk about a spectrum. I say a person, a differently abled applicant recognizes their disability as part of life for everyone on a spectrum of severity. And let me just define that just a little bit by saying that when you wear glasses, it means that you don't see correctly. Is that okay to say? Anybody? Okay. I
Yes.
see some heads nodding there. Okay. So when you wear glasses, that becomes an accommodation. Sometimes the severity of that is that you cannot do a job without your glasses. Okay. That means that the employer needs to know that you need that as an accommodation. And the severity of disability is on like a spectrum, the same thing we talk about with autism spectrum. Okay. There's less severe to more severe. And so um, as I go further into this, I'll explain more about what to express in an interview as far as how severe your disability is. Employers ask me, and have done this over the years, about how do they focus on the applicant's abilities and qualifications when they continually keep talking about their disability. They go into the interview right away talking about how their disability prevents them from doing certain things. And potential employees need to understand that the employer is not interested in your disability. The employer is interested, and not to say that they're not compassionate, but their purpose is that they're looking at how productive you can be, if you can contribute, if you are going to perform at the same level as other employees. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go through. So what is the difference in interviewing a person with a non-visible or visible disability? As you can see from the photo, there's no difference, except for the fact that maybe one person here is in a wheelchair, but everyone here could have a non-visible disability. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. The need for an interpreter, access with your with your wheelchair. Maybe you use a cane. Maybe you're requesting large print or some kind of visual supports. I was just on the phone with someone doing a mock interview, and they needed to have a closed caption in order to continue with me. So, next slide. This is real important. It's just a point I wanted to bring out. Like I said, there's many, many things that I can talk about today. But most importantly, I wanted to say that one of the points that I wanted to make was where you work is very important to ask in an interview. And people ask me all the time, well, what do I say when I'm in an interview? When they ask that question, well, do you have any more questions to ask? Okay. So
The slide isn't on the screen, Dr. Applewhite. Can you hear me?
pardon me?
The slide isn't on the screen. I know you
Okay.
mentioned you wanted the slide
Will
up.
the applicant work is not on the screen right now?
No.
Okay. I'm not sure why it's not on the screen, but I'm sure that Morgan will fix it in a minute here. But let me just go on with the environment. The environment that we work in is so important. And sometimes people think that where they're interviewing at is going to be the environment. Shawnee Cotton, we're so glad to have you here today. And thank you so much for letting us know about the slide. But you take, for instance, someone who has a history of epilepsy. Maybe they can't handle flashing lights. You need to ask whether or not there's the environment that they're going to work in, whether or not it has noises, flashing lights. And I find another thing I find is that people don't ask or are afraid to ask sometimes whether or not they're going to be close to others working. And they have, unfortunately, it's uncomfortable for them to work close to others, proximity to others. And so the environment that they interview in is not necessarily the environment that they're going to work in. And I find that many times with people going into job interviews, and then they go into a call center and they're not familiar with what a call center looks like. So how do you prepare mentally and physically? We're living in a time right now where we've got mass mass layoffs, terminations. So people are going to be applying for jobs, thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, as a matter of fact, now, especially in the United States. And so you have to be on top of things. You have to be mentally and physically ready. Employers ask, how they can be mentally and physically able uh, um, to interview. How do I prepare myself for that? And I always give them the references, the resources of the Americans with Disabilities Act, the Job Accommodations Network, and of course, the Department of Labor. And as we go to the next slide, I want to emphasize that as we talk about the applicant being prepared mentally and physically, we want to make sure that if you don't have the information available to you through Google, you can always contact White Apple Institute at 888-562-7753. That's 888-56-APPLE. You can always contact us and get more information. As a matter of fact, we even have a consultation program, free consultation. So don't feel reluctant at all to get the information that you need. You need to have the information available to you. Employers focus, again, I can't stress this enough, on productivity and performance. They want to know, what can you bring to the table? And one of the things that I share with employers is this Great Lakes Disability Center states, you can ask applicants about their abilities, but not their disabilities, okay? And that becomes such a big, big thing about what you can ask and what you can't ask. But I'll tell you something, you as the applicant and potential employee, if you're listening to this, you're the one who has to know what you need and how to explain what accommodations you need on the job. That's your job, okay? Not the employer's job. So I hope I've given you some points here. And I'm going to say, most importantly, for me, what I found throughout the years is 3 different areas that I find that people lack in when they're in an interview setting. And that is self-respect and self-advocacy and self-knowledge. And just breaking that down a little bit, when you're in an interview setting, you need to sit there with your head up high, and you need to be able to say to the employer that that you've really read that job description and you can associate your experience, your qualifications with what the job description is. Okay, moving on here. Know what accommodations you need now. Okay, we're going to move on now. If I've at least piqued your interest, okay, and some of the things that are important when we're identifying ourselves as a differently abled applicant. I hope I have. Remember again that there's resources available. I can't help but bring on our special guest, Shawnique Cotton, and the reason why I really wanted her to be part of this particular differently abled network meeting is because she's one who, to me, even though she's not applying for jobs, she's applying for business opportunities. And she has a lot of self-respect. She knows how to advocate for herself. And she's developing constantly her self-knowledge. Shawnique, we welcome you to the Differently Able Network meeting today.
Yeah.
And there'll be questions that are going to come up, okay, as they do for Dr. Jane Garcia, who's here, and she'll be doing our veterans feature in a minute. There's going to be questions and comments that are going to come up, but we'd like to know a little bit about you.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm Shawnique, also known as Nikki Cotton. Nikki is my nickname. That's what I'm known for mostly. I am from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I relocated. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I relocated to Arizona in 2000, what, 2005? Yeah, 2005. I initially came here for business opportunities as well as my health. And I'm a mom of two. And I am the former chair for Arizona Statewide Independent Living Council, just like Dr. Applewhite.
Yes.
I'm also the present vice chair, and I also lead the emergency preparedness for APL. I'm the former Miss Wheelchair Arizona 2019, and by me taking on that title opened a lot of doors for me, meeting a lot of individuals within the disability community. And I noticed that my sister's on here, Melly Adu. Hi, Melly,
Mm-hmm.
amazing show. Um, and the reason why I'm bringing that up is because, I didn't lost my train of thought. Forgive me, I have a brain injury, so sometimes I can lose my train of thought. There was something I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to say, and it had something to do with Melly, but I'll have to just get back to that.
And
Please go.
we
Um,
appreciate that you can bring that out. We
yes,
appreciate that you can bring that out because that's necessary because of the fact that you do lose track sometimes. And so
yes,
that's the only reason why you have to sometimes talk about your disability. Thank you
yes,
so much.
definitely, definitely.
Can you
I,
speak up a little
you,
bit louder? Is there,
sure. Let me also try to turn this up. I apologize.
there you go.
I have to purchase some new earpods. I use a wheelchair for mobility. I'm just sharing that with you guys. And I ran over my earpods, so it's unfortunate, but I'm getting a new pair. So I do have headphones, but they don't work quite well with this tablet
So
device.
you're former Miss
Yes,
Wheelchair.
and
And
yes, and I'll share with you what that entails. That's a organization that was created back in, I believe, 1956. I, I believe. I know I'm at least close to the correct date. And a gentleman created that because he had a daughter with a physical disability. And he felt like his daughter was being overlooked. Meanwhile, she was really intelligent. She was an intelligent young lady. She had paralysis, and she was being overlooked. And women back then, they didn't. No one looked at them when it came to being able to hold down a job or
mhm,
either get an interview. So what he decided to do was create an organization based on his daughter so that women with paralysis or women that use chairs for mobility reasons could show the world that they too have a brain, they too are intelligent, they too can advocate for themselves. So that's how that great organization did come about. So what they do is they bring over 50 women. They try to get 50 women every state to represent their state. And what you do is you select a topic of what you would like to speak on. My
mhm.
topic was leadership. Well, I didn't. It's been so long, guys. It was on proper leader. Oh Lord, I didn't forget what my topic was on. It had to do with
It's all right. We got the leadership part, and that's
okay,
so important. And you had to interview for this.
yes, yes, proper leadership. What the reason why I chose my title, I'll tell you what it entailed. It entailed, I realized doing some research years ago, I realized that under 3%, I wanted to understand why is it that the disability community have so many issues? Why are we so behind on the times?
Mhm,
and and why was this so why was funding so low when it comes to giving to our community to help us achieve greater heights? So I
mhm,
started doing research, and what I found was that I said, wait a minute, there's folks making these decisions for us. Let me check out these folks that's making the decisions for us. And who was that? That's Congress, the Senate, right? So what I found was under 2% at that time that were making all these decisions had no disability. So I said, okay, there's your problem right there.
mhm.
So that's where I came up with leadership and proper representation for persons with disabilities. That was my speech. That's what I gave a speech on for the Miss Wheelchair. And that was my whole year, my whole entire reign. is what I did. I went around, I went to the governor's office. I spoke with many of congressmen and congresswomen. I spoke in front of many businesses, and I just spoke on the fact that we need to push for more advocates with disabilities to run
Mm-hmm.
for office, because there will be no change until that happens. And not just advocates who or have disabilities, we need to alliance ourselves with
Mm-hmm.
people who respect and understand us and want to be a part of this vision that we see. And we need more people. So that's why I chose that topic. Oh, it's
Well,
so much more to tell you
it
about
feeds
me.
it feeds right into what we're trying to say here today. And because you have a visible disability and probably some non-visible disabilities also, I you have to talk about, you have to explain in a way what's going on with you, but you don't go into detail. I noticed that, and that's so important because employers or the business people that you're talking to are not medical professionals. Okay, they're not mental health professionals, so
I
they're
never
so
speak on it.
right.
Never. I speak about what I can do and my skill set, and,
There
and
you
and the
go.
way that I speak in itself, they're captivated by, they're either interested or they're not. So coming in with confidence is a win-win most of the time. It's all
Yes.
about the confidence, the mindset. If you
Mm-hmm.
come in with a good mindset, you get up, when you prepare, you should already be prepared before you go in. You know what type of position you're applying for. You should have done all the research on that particular company. I haven't applied for a job in so long, but I remember those days.
Mm-hmm.
But um, you should already have prepared yourself weeks and weeks or months prior to knowing, okay, I want this type of position. Do the research. What does the job entail? You know what your limits are, if there are any limits. So you know if this type of position would fit you before,
Mm-hmm.
long before you're going for it. So
Yes.
that's already taken care of ahead of time, right? The
Mm-hmm.
key is do your research, be thorough, and they're going to ask you some questions, but also you put out some things about when they ask you, well, why is it you want to join this company or blah, blah, blah. You should be able to break down everything on the why because you done read everything, researched it out. So no one cares about your disability or your mental health. Only time that should come up is it, say, I'll give you a perfect example. Say because I've never shared it unless I've had positions where I've even worked from home, and
Mm-hmm.
I may meet my company in person for an event or something 6 months down the line, and they'll look and they'll compliment me, and they no one never knew I had a disability because we had no reason to discuss that. I was there to do a job. I got my job done. No one cared, and it didn't affect me in no way. Eventually someone might ask, hey, what, and that's okay to once they see, but I was treated no differently. Only time you should speak on accommodations is if there's a reason for it. After, I would speak up after I get the job if I
Yes.
need. And most of the time there's resources and organizations that you already should have in place before
Mm-hmm.
going to get the job that can take care of whatever it is your needs are.
Mm-hmm. It's a good
So
point. Let me ask you this, so you can elaborate a little bit and inspire many people that are going to be that are listening now and will be listening. What are you doing now with your life? You've gone through a number of things in your life, both physically, mentally, and then spiritually, and you've grown tremendously. And you've put all that together, and now you're building a business. Tell us a little bit about where you're going in the future and what you would like to do.
oh, it's a lot going on here. It, it really is a lot. Um, well, I've been, how can I say this without saying too much on in the particular area? I went through a serious traumatic event in the past few years. Miss Melia Do, she's one of the only people that's aware of it as well as you. So the past couple years, I've been I've had to rest and heal my body, put it like that. My mindset is great. It's my
Mm-hmm.
physical body wasn't
Mm-hmm.
great. So I'm finally at a place. I finally, about 8 months ago, decided I needed to back up off of certain things. And Melly, she can attest to that. I was just a part of many like committees, and I'm trying to do too much, and I had to like back away. I'm still
Mm-hmm.
involved with some things, but I realized it's time for me to do me. And doing me has always been to become a speaker, a great speaker.
Mm-hmm.
But also, what happened was before I got involved with advocating for individuals with disabilities, I initially came out as a speaker, and I
Mm-hmm.
was on my way. I was out here doing literally getting ready. I was actually doing some things. And then I ended up meeting you and some
Mm-hmm.
other, and Leonard and David Carey, and then eventually Melly Adu, and you guys brought me in this fold. So I had no idea about the world of disability. It didn't even really exist. And that's what I was going to mention prior before I had that brain freeze. Melly and I spoke one day, and I was telling her years ago, and I was like, I never knew of any of this world because I grew up in a world. I got shot over 30 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and I initially just kicked into, I got back to my life. As soon as I got out of the hospital and rehab, I got right back to life. It was nothing. I had a new life, but it stopped me in no way as far as I had a child. I was pregnant at the time, and I had
Oh.
already had a young 3-year-old. So my concern was my children. I got to get back to living. That was
Mm-hmm.
all I wanted to do, right? And from there, I went home and I found myself in a situation though. I had all these opportunities that fell my way too. Um, like prior to that, I worked at the post office, right, as a mail clerk,
Mm-hmm.
but I was a temp worker. But they kept bringing me back. And what I didn't know is at the time when I got shot, they had selected 32 people to become full-time workers. And after I got shot, I found out you were one of them, Miss Cotton. They were giving me a full-time job, permanent. So I find this out when I get out the hospital. The U.S. Postal in Pennsylvania reached out to me and let me know, um, and they let me know I can still come back when I'm
You
ready.
still come back.
And,
Mm-hmm.
and they would give me some different job duties because I was a mail clerk at that time working with the barcode machines. And they said, well, we know you're unable to do that at the time, but what we have is a position for individuals normally are vets. They normally gave these jobs to vets, and it's where you're sitting, it's a sitting position, and you tape up the ripped up mail, and you still make the big bucks. So they
Well,
offered it to me.
wow.
And it was a beautiful, like, it really touched my soul. But during that time, I also had found out I was pregnant. It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot going on here, okay? And Allegheny General Hospital had a new program for individuals with spinal cord injury. They had some new amazing um, things that came out that would make changes in life. So they contacted me at the same time and offered to put me in that trial.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to them, well, I'm pregnant. And they said, oh, you wouldn't fit if you're pregnant. Are you
Oh
going to
no.
keep,
Oh no, you won't. I'm sorry. I didn't get that last part. Oh no, you.
they told me if I'm going to keep my child, I couldn't be in the trial. It
Ah.
wasn't possible.
Okay.
So of course I'm not going, of course I'm keeping my child, right? So, but it was dire that I get in this program immediately if it was going to bring any change for me with my spinal cord injury. I chose my child, of course, right? Okay. Some things started happening with me where I kept getting dizzy. So I realized I couldn't take the job on. I wanted to go back to work. I also had an opportunity because I had a great attorney that treated me like a daughter that wanted to send me off to Penn State to go to college and was willing to
Hmm.
help me. He helped me. He helped me for years.
This is
But I
great. This is great.
see, I'm one of the fortunate ones. The problem was I kept getting sick and I couldn't understand why I kept getting dizzy. I, I didn't understand until almost 20 years later that I had a brain injury.
Hmm.
And I had to find that out on my own because no one would listen to me.
And look at you. Just look at you. I mean, you are so beautiful. And I'm sure that our guest today can say the same. And you speak so well. And we're out of time, unfortunately. We'd love to sit here and listen to you because I know I can see Cindy's head going, yes, yes, yes. Okay. Are there any comments that we want to make to Shanique? Okay, to tell her how much we appreciate her sharing her story today. Cindy, you have anything you wanted to say to her? Oh, okay. You're muted. Okay. Anyone else?
I certainly do. First of all, thank you again, Shanique, for just leading a great discussion. A lot of what you talked about not only just aligned with, I think, the topic of just, what does a applicant of disability look like, right? But
Mm-hmm.
a lot of what you talked about just kind of resonated because I love how you mentioned the fact that it's not really advocated for a lot, like how the world of disability was really new to you. And I found myself in a very similar situation until I met Dr. Applewhite, where I had not really heard of it. I mean, as a kid, you grow up and you're just told like for other kids your age with this physical disabilities, don't stare. But that's it. You never really understand the why. You never really
Mm-hmm.
elaborate more on that. But as I've gotten older and been more exposed to physical disabilities, and then Dr. Applewhite opening a whole new world of the hidden disabilities, it's really it's really been evident that I don't know if there's really anyone truly in this world who doesn't have a disability. But as Apple mentioned, as Apple did mention, there is a scale, right, of severity and what actually can be classified as one. But the fact that mental health is one, I mean, come on, like that is just so clear to me that everyone truly has something that they can't do. Everyone has a limitation. It's just a
Mm-hmm.
matter of in what area is that limitation. But another thing I really wanted to highlight what Shanique said was regarding I gotta think of it. It was a specific statement. It'll come to me.
It'll come
But
to you. We'll have to go back to it because we have to
yes.
move on. We have another special guest. We got to go on to our veterans feature. Shanique, we appreciate you being here today. I hope you come back, okay, for more topics to discuss because you've got a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and appreciate your leadership skills. Appreciate the self-respect you show, and the advocacy skills that you show. Thank you so much for being here today. And please
Thank
stick
you.
around because Dr. Jane Garcia, you're going to really enjoy what she has to say. Dr. Jane, are you there? I'm going to put on my
Here.
veterans
I'm
hat
here.
now. I have a new hat now. It actually says women veterans on it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, I have to get me one of those. Hi, everybody. Shawnee, thank you for, your story, and the insight. And I think one of the biggest takeaway from your story for me was how much people don't know. And even
Mhm.
though they say, oh, the information is out there,
Yes.
you just have to find it and you just
Yes.
have to. But when you're trying to figure out how you're going to live, how you're going to pay your expenses, how you're going to pay for healthcare, how you're going to get to your appointments, how you're going to take care of your children, at what point does a person find a time to seek out information?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so I'm glad that you said that out loud because I think a lot of times we don't realize how much people don't know
Mm-hmm.
about what is available to them.
Right. And another thing they don't know is how strong, especially strong women, are out there and they're looking for opportunities to continue being all that they can be. And that's what I took away from Shawnee today, is that no matter what the circumstances were, what she landed up in the wheelchair, she has rolled up her sleeves and continued. And Dr. Jane, I just appreciate you being here as one Army veteran to another, um, because I know that you can see the need for women veterans as a rule to understand some of the things that are going on with applying for jobs in today's world and applying for any kind of business opportunity. There's
Yeah, I think that for us as veterans, there are several layers, right? Um, One is that we have all this experience, but because it's such a wide range of experience, how
mm-hmm,
do we narrow it to fit into what the person is asking for?
mm-hmm,
We cannot put all that we do or did on a resume because then it's overwhelming for the reader. And chances are they don't want to hear all of that. And so part of the process for veterans is convincing the veteran, look, the HR person does not want all of this information
mm-hmm,
because they don't
mm-hmm.
need
Yeah.
all of this information. Can you do the job, one? And do you have experience doing this,
Mm-hmm,
whatever this job is that you're applying for? Do you have either the experience or the education or both
mm-hmm.
to complete or to do this job that they're asking for? And it's just a snippet of your experience. It's not all of your experience. So that's one part. The other part is um, how we present ourselves
Mm-hmm.
um, in terms of the language that we speak. Um, our employers do not know, I'm sorry to turn this off. Our employers do not know the word MOS and they don't know the words, you know, what is this SOP? And it's a completely different language. And
Right. And
so
many times we talk like that. Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and we can't talk like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's a completely different language. And so we have to learn how to not be a service member because then we are in a new environment. And so that's
Yeah.
another part of the reintegration process.
Dr. Jane, you pointed out something real important there, as far as what we need, the identity of the individual and how we express ourselves. Because as a women veterans, as veterans, period, as people with disabilities, period. Okay, the employer does not know that language, and there is a language, there is a culture, and we need to come to the employer or the person that's interviewing us with at least an understanding and try to have an understanding for what their perspective is. And so you're absolutely right.
Yeah, I think and all of those things we get during the TAP, the transition um training,
Mm-hmm,
but it's hard to tell someone something, you know. Now, when the person is actually going through the transition and actually in the job interview,
mm-hmm,
then, those things kind of click and begin to make sense.
mm-hmm.
But it's hard to tell someone and then, how do I say, there's a difference between telling someone and someone experiencing it.
What is reintegrate doing as far as preparing women um, for the job market, preparing
Um,
women veterans for the job market?
for us, in Reintegrate, there are a couple of things we want to do. So, and we are doing. So some of it is the soft skills. So, um, maybe we need to smile.
Yeah.
Let's try that, right? Um, Maybe we need to look at people when we talk to them
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, and I would tell some of the women, um, try and engage in small talk, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because
mm-hmm,
as veterans, we struggle with small talk. We've
mm-hmm.
dealt with bigger issues. And so, since we've dealt with bigger issues and life and death issues, we struggle with small talk. However,
Yeah.
um, I have a list of questions. So, if you're talking to someone, what's new in your industry? And so it presents a learning experience or a learning conversation for us. And it's not trivial conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's one big question that, can lead people, to
That's good.
different
That's big.
areas.
That's
Yeah,
big. The small talk is big because
right.
we miss that in the military. We don't have a lot of small talk. Okay. Yes.
No.
It's do the job, do the job. Yes.
Yeah, and be done with it. So, one of the questions I would tell them, ask people, what industry are they in or what's new in their industry. Because if you ask someone what industry they're in, they may get, don't question
Hmm.
me, sort of thing, right? But if you
Right.
say, what's new in your industry, then that opens up the conversation in a different way, right?
That's so important because at the end of the interview, when they ask are there any questions that you have? Okay. Most people just freeze. That is the hardest part in many mock interviews that I've done. Okay. Even. So in the reality interview, it really hurts them that they don't have
Right.
any questions, you
Right.
know?
And then we also can't be afraid to talk about salary. What is the salary for this position? Or
Hmm.
I saw the salary for this position is such and such.
Good point.
Um, how would you, um, what is the pay increase structure? Is there one?
Hmm.
Because, sometimes there may not be one or whatever. And so what does raises look like for this particular organization? It, I would like to request maybe 25 cents more or 50 cents more based on my experience and
Hmm.
education,
Oh, that's hard for a lot
and
of people.
yes, especially for women. But we have to negotiate our salary because then we need a place to live and we need to eat like everybody else.
Dr. Jane, I don't know if you heard earlier. I know time is moving on here, but I just want to make this additional point here. I think you heard me talk about environment being so important, knowing what kind of environment you're going to work in. And since you deal, and both of us deal with women that have trauma issues, um, it's so important that they understand the environment that they're going to be going into, and it doesn't necessarily look like the interview setting in itself. And so, what do you suggest to women that are dealing with trauma, especially PTSD or military sexual trauma, and they're going into a job for the first time, okay, after transition?
They need to ask, what is a day in the life of such and such
Mm,
look like? So
yes,
what would a work day look for like for me, in this organization or in this position?
it's
That's
good.
a good question. Um, and they need to, and they may not talk about what triggered them in
Right.
the
Don't talk about
interview.
that. Right.
That's not
Exactly.
the place for that. And so, they cannot talk about that, and we encourage them to not talk about that.
Hmm.
Um, but then they have to have a level of self-awareness.
Mm,
You see,
level of self-awareness.
yes, because then if I know this is a trigger, this is a trigger, that is a trigger, then what am I going to do to combat this? What
Hmm.
am I going to do to combat that? And so, along with the level of self-awareness, is a level of preparation
Hmm.
because we cannot go into an environment unprepared. And so, maybe we may have to self-talk, maybe we may
Hmm.
have to take 2 or 3 breaths. Maybe we may have to walk to the restroom. Um, what am I going to do in such and such situation. And so to have somewhat of a plan before the situation arises. And so when it comes, the person doesn't freezes.
Right. So preparing mentally, as I spoke about earlier, preparing mentally and physically for the situation. The employers have to do that too, but definitely the potential applicant, the potential employee, I should say, because that's what we are when we apply for a job. We're a potential employee, and we need to understand that we're getting
Yes.
ready to walk into a new arena of life. Okay,
Yeah.
thank
And,
you.
and
Go
yeah.
ahead.
And the other thing that I encourage veterans to understand is that as the veteran community, we are a very small segment of the population. So if I am to have 100 people, 10 out of that 100 people will be a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
but only 1 to 2, because women veteran make up 1.5%
Mm-hmm.
of the
Wow,
US population.
1.5.
Yeah. So sometimes you may get one, sometimes you may get two. So only 1 or 2 out of that 10 will be a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And so women veterans, we're a very minute segment of the population. And so in saying so, it's veterans also understanding that the 90% will not acquiesce to us
Mm-hmm.
because we're too small of a
Yes.
population.
Yes.
And so we have to learn to move in and out of the dominant culture
Mm.
because 10%, the 90% will not acquiesce to the 10, much
I think
less the 1.5.
right, right. Good. I mean, these are very, very good points. Thank you so much for the points that you made. Is Lori here? Is Lori here?
I
I
am
don't
here.
see. Yes. Um, Lori, do you have any comments? I mean, I know you've been soaping up, absorbing all of this good stuff that's been coming out here. Do you have any questions or comments for Dr. Jane?
I don't right now. I've been a little
Yes.
distracted by my granddaughter, who you can see waving something in the background.
Right,
I've
right.
been listening
That's
with one
important.
ear and grandmothering with the other.
That's important stuff. But I just want to say that I appreciate that Dr. Jane in her work with women veterans, and she's taken on a quite an ordeal here because based on the fact that there's not a lot of attention given to women veterans, and we appreciate that you're bringing that on. Do you find as I do, I find that there really is very little difference in applying for a job as a woman veteran, as a person with disability. You're an applicant, you're a potential employee. Do you see that across the board?
I don't quite understand your question,
Okay,
Dr.
across the
Apple.
board. In other words, when you're sitting in a room with other interviewees, people that are going to go into the interview process, okay, you have to succeed over others, basically. So you have to bring out certain things about yourself that are going to put you in an advanced position over other people. One thing that would not put you in an advanced position is talking about your disability. Okay. But there are certain things that will help you to succeed, especially as a woman veteran. And that is talking about I'm a veteran. Okay. That's
So,
talking about your strengths, not your weaknesses.
right.
You agree?
Yes, I agree. One of the things that veterans have going for them is that we understand being a part of a team
Mm-hmm.
because that is a big part of being a service member.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one.
Ooh,
Um,
that's a good plus.
yes, and that's a good plus. Two, we understand structure because we're a product of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so we also understand being committed to the task and see through to the finish.
Mm-hmm.
That is important because then the level of commitment that a veteran will bring to the workplace um, is going to be at a higher level. Now,
Right.
if
Right.
we're talking about um, And it's also training veterans to understand that everything will not go your way,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so you're not running around with little soldiers running around you. And so there have to be a level of flexibility,
A little level of what?
of flexibility.
Yes. A level of
And so
flexibility. Yes.
if it doesn't go your way, the world doesn't come to an end.
Right.
As project managers, if we're a day or two, off the task or whatever, the world does not come to an end.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it is okay. And I feel like that's another thing we have to train ourselves to get used to and talk about, you know, in the workplace, because then, the civilian environment is very unstructured.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so
Very much.
understanding how it is to live and work in a place without structure and you creating the best structure that you can, but also understanding that this structure isn't set in stone. And
Right.
so allow yourself to have some level of flexibility.
And that's good point. This is good point for everyone. Mm-hmm. Good
Right?
point for everyone.
Yeah, because we cannot afford to get angry. We cannot afford to lose our minds, and we just can't afford it.
Or
And so
let the trauma
exactly.
overcome us. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good
And
point.
so, how do we, if we feel ourselves getting to that place, maybe I need to go and to the restroom and wash my hands or go
Mm-hmm.
to the water fountain and drink some water, and so forth. Enroll in therapy.
Well,
And
you,
I always tell them there's nothing wrong with therapy.
that's
Um,
right.
it's not an ick word. It's not an ick process. There's a level of self-discovery that happens during therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But and one of the biggest things I always want my listener to understand and the clients that we have to understand is that who we are in the beginning of the process. See, transformation, they go in three parts. So we're at the beginning, we're at the middle, we're at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Who we are at the beginning is very different from who will be at the end, who we will
At
be
the,
at the end.
when we're
And
actually
this,
hired.
yeah, when we're
Right.
actually hired,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so I may start out as this person, veteran with an MOS of a 54B or 75 Lima or whatever. I may start out here. I will have to take the skills, some of the skills that
Mm-hmm.
I have from here to bring over here. But
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to take all of my skills because I don't need all of that. And so who I am at the beginning of the process will be very different from who I become at the end
Mm.
of the process.
Wow.
And I have to have those skills that I need in the middle. And so, how do I acquire those new soft skills? How do I
Right.
acquire? Um, it's not just the soft skills, it's the people skills, right? Plus
And
learning this new job.
truly it is a sense of adaptation. You are
Yes.
adapting to the environment. Okay,
Yes.
as you go from different through different phases. Uh, Shanique, do you have anything yet you want to finalize before we bring on Lori? Lori is waiting to capitalize on what Dr. Jane said about relaxation and breathing and all of those things during the period whenever you get upset about things. Um, but before we get there, is there anything that you wanted to say to closure?
Oh, I just want to say thank you. I really enjoyed being here today with you all and on this lovely Sunday. And well, we all need to remember that we're all human beings and we all want the same thing, and it's to be loved and to we want to love, we want to be loved, and we want to be treated all with respect. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
we all need to remember. Human kindness, despite, regardless of whether you have any type of disability, it doesn't really matter. You're a human being, you're loved, and confidence in loving oneself is most important. Self-love is so
Mm-hmm.
important. I think so many people miss out on loving themselves, and that affects them in so many areas in life, even like applying for a job, where they're like she had mentioned about I done lost my train of thought again. You get the gist of what I'm trying to say. People forget to ask questions. They get nervous at the end of the interview. They're terrified and
Sure.
they start losing. You know, you have to be confident and love yourself and go in with an open mind and tell yourself, I'm a winner. This is my day. This is my time. I'm claiming this today.
I think that's what Dr. Jane was emphasizing also. That
Yes.
thank you both for so many good points, so many additional points that you brought out today. Lori, do you hear that sometimes in the interview process there's a lot of anxiety?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Very
and with that
common.
anxiety comes also a knowledge, a self-knowledge that people have to have about how to calm themselves down. I always tell students that the butterflies are great. Just make sure they fly in formation in your stomach. Okay, there's nothing wrong with having I have butterflies. I still do, and I've been publicly speaking for a long time, over 50 years, and so. But I still have those butterflies, and I still use some of the things that we talk about restoring hope, healing, and relaxing. And today we bring on as our guest here for our differently abled artists and musicians is Nellie Anderson here? Because we have a lot of telephone numbers here. I don't know which one is Nellie Anderson. But anyway, if Nellie is online, please come forward so that we can hear your story. And Lori, before we end here, the reason why we do this differently abled artists and musicians is because we bring things to the table that will help people to succeed, okay, and help people to relax and enjoy life. Isn't that right?
That's true. Do you want to do something with this slide before we go on to the next
No,
one?
no, no. I'll relax with that later.
Let's go to the next one then. There we go. Did we find out if Nellie's here or not? Did you need to unmute Nellie so you can speak with us?
No, she's not here, so
Okay.
we missed her again.
Well, just this morning in our spiritual community, I was speaking about stress. And if you don't have stress, then you're probably not breathing anymore, because we all have stress
Good
at
point.
some point in our life. So if you've ascended beyond having stress in your life, you've gone up to nirvana. So you're good. Stress comes from all different things. And I have a 5-year-old right now that's wanting to play with me while I'm trying to remember what I want to say. So I'm a little stressed with that, although I love having her here.
It's all right. We accept her.
Good. Yeah, you're good.
She will soon be a potential employee, a potential
Yes.
applicant.
She helps my stress levels quite a bit usually, because
Yes.
she makes me laugh. And that's an important thing, is that we need to laugh. And we sometimes get so caught up in the seriousness of our work, of our job application, of our children, of our homework, of our whatever it is, that we completely forget that if we don't sometimes take a little break from all that stress, it starts to wear at us. It starts to affect our health. It affects our mental health. It affects our energy levels, everything. And so just taking a breath sometimes, just taking a breath. There's all kinds of techniques for breathing and different things you can do, but just taking a breath in through the nose and letting it out through the mouth, and putting your feet on the floor and feeling where you are, and being in the moment, even if just for a minute or two, when you're in the middle of getting ready for an interview and you're all stressed out,
Yes.
take a breath and feel your feet on the floor, and you'd be amazed at the difference just that little thing can make in getting you more centered and in. Then there's things you can do ongoing that can help you. And we've got pictures of those up here on the screen. There's art, there's music, there's dance, there's writing, there's
Mhm.
Your guy here doing ceramics. There's all kinds of things that you can do, including watching a funny TV show or anything that makes you laugh. I call my friend Dr. Apple, and she and I laugh quite a bit. So that's important to bring laughter into your life and to bring breath into your life and to bring just that little break that lets you bring your shoulders down where you're going deaf because your shoulders are up around your ears, and letting those shoulders down and getting in the moment can make a huge difference when you're under stress like that.
And so important, especially when we're talking about triggers, as Dr. Jane brought out, okay, is that when we feel in an interview setting, okay, whether we're applying for a business opportunity or we're applying for an actual job, um, there's a moment where we have to find that relaxation part of us and to overcome the trigger that might come up in an interview. We know, and this is so important that employees know, potential employees know, the differently abled applicant knows that there are questions that employers absolutely cannot ask you. And so, but sometimes they step over the boundaries, okay? And that's where you have to know what the questions are that they cannot ask and how to get around them. But for example, somebody asking, have you ever had any mental health issues? Or have you ever applied for workman's comp? These are compensation. These are questions that are not allowed in an interview setting. And so there's more. And so I hope that people will contact us, Lori, at White Apple Institute and ask us before their interview or whatever, how do I accomplish this? What kind of skills and qualifications do I talk about? We're willing to talk to you about that. The number is, again, 888-56-APPLE. That's 888-562-7753. And that's a text. You can text us or call us, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. So, Lori, we're going to, as we close today, and we don't have Nellie here on the line, I really so sorry that we're going to miss her. We're going to bring out Steel in Our Spine as our closing music today, because it's so important that we look at the steel in our spine, the self-respect, the self-advocacy, the self-knowledge that comes with having strength. And so Daniel Namad, the one that you picked, and you're a very good friend, I would like to play his music in closing. Are we able to do that?
Yeah, let me just stop the share real quick because it's not letting me pull it up. So just temporarily let me stop the share.
Okay. I think I see a number there. I see a 799 number. Maybe she can't come in. I see a 799 number. I think that's her number there. Can you get to that? Because I wanted so much to have her come on today.
Wonder if she knows how to unmute, to click the little red
Can you
microphone.
unmute, Nellie? Try to unmute your phone if you can hear us. Okay. I don't think that's working.
Okay,
Everybody.
I cannot talk because I was mute. I was asking unmute me. Nobody listened. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear us now?
Yeah, I am here since 12:13.
Okay. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. You're coming on at just the right time. And we wanted to talk to you. Nellie Anderson is from Peru, and she is a vocalist. And the reason why she came on to the differently abled artist and musician part of our program is because I wanted people to understand how she restores hope and healing for herself. Nellie, you've been very open, and I hope you don't, is it okay we have to talk about the factor that you have succeeded with a learning disability in your life?
Yeah,
And you have done a wonderful job with raising a beautiful daughter with autism. And
yes.
and you're such a beautiful person, and I wanted you to really share your story for a moment with us.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, when I was a little girl, when I started the school, was a kind of weird things was going on in me because I can realize that I am kind of different than other girls. I was seeing girls, they were learning very fast, reading faster than me, com- understand other things. Me, I was kind of understand, but later on, after I have enough activity to catch up everything. So I noticed all that. The other thing is, at that time, nobody knew about this, look, what we are calling um, disorders in the deficit disorders.
The learning disability. Yes.
Deficit disorder, yeah.
Yes.
So all this. So my mom was kind of a little bit lose the patient with me, thinking that I was doing in delivery way. Teachers, well, not teachers, nuns, because I study in Catholic Church. They believe they was doing in delivery way. Everybody was believing they was doing in delivery way. So I spent hard time, really hard time in the school for that disability. My daddy was a person who was pursue with me. He was telling me all the time, "Go ahead, you can do it, you can do it." He was a person who really scooped me up. I made it at school, sometimes barely, but I was making it go like that. So
Mm-hmm.
and then when I arrived here, the United States, I came very young. Was a little bit worse for me because was English. I have to learn English.
Oh,
Then
yes.
I had to adapt a new society with different rules, with no
Cultural. Yes.
family,
Mm-hmm.
with everything complete
Wow.
different, food, habits, um, all that you have to get used to the new world that you put myself in there, right? Well, the good thing is there was a person who I never lose the hope. Yeah, I was saying I had to try. Yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
start doing in the different hospitals to take care of patients. Was very tough because there are other girls that was doing faster than me, understand better than me, but the
Mm-hmm.
English barriers was worse. But I was doesn't matter. I was going and going, keeping going, keeping going. Um, After certain period of time, longer than other ones, I made it. I get my diploma about the be working
Fantastic.
for. Mm-hmm. And then I start with a desire to do a little bit upper, but I start thinking I can do this for right now. I had to have enough experience in here that way I can be a higher level. Because I go right now, everything gonna be new for me again. Everything is new for me. No matter what, I gonna get getting struggles. Yeah, I had to get used to. I had to, my mind probably, or I don't know, have to get used to get experience. It then
Sure.
it became better. It became very good. So I was making decisions to say, okay, I have to have experience in certain area. After that, I had to do other one. Yeah, I start doing that. Then I get married. I have two daughters. Michelle, my second daughter, was born autistic.
Mm-hmm.
Was a huge, huge, huge challenge. It's still
Yes.
a challenge, but like I am saying before, I had to get used to. I already get used to. Yeah, I handle her very well. I believe that that kind of challenge makes you stronger in your character, in everything, in every single thing. So I I don't know how I made because my first husband abandoned me with the two girls. Yeah, I stay alone with both. I don't know how I don't know
Well,
how I study
I'm
English.
gonna say
I
to
don't know.
you,
What's that?
I'm going to say to you that the reason why you probably made it is because of your strength, and you just said something a while ago about restoring your hope. Okay, you
Yes.
kept your hope going, and that's why we wanted you to share with us some of the you do music a lot. You're
Oh,
a
yeah.
musician,
Do you
and
know?
and
Yes.
you promised us that you would grace us with a song that you feel that says it all for you. Okay, even
Yeah.
though we accept different religions, we're not a religious or political organization, but your song means a lot about
Okay.
restoring hope and healing. And so we hope that you'll share with us because we're out of time,
Okay.
unfortunately.
Okay.
And we enjoy having you here today. Would you please grace us with your song? I know that
Okay.
some people have to go. If you have to close, we're going to
Sure.
close our
Sure.
meeting here. Make sure that you are aware of how to make a donation to whiteappleinstitute.org.
Mm-hmm.
That this is how we keep this program going. If you like what you see, and I'm
Sure.
sure you do.
Sure. Sure. Okay, no problem with the song. I can do it. I
What does this
choose.
song mean to you?
Is the song is from a distance. Though that song inspired me a lot of hope because in this world, we have a different kinds of people, different minds, different beliefs, and we those things people are practically fighting each other for what they believe, but there is one truth. It is that love exists in the perfection world. It means heaven. We are sometimes wasting time in in fighting. You wanted people believe what you believe. It things like that we are wasting time when we have to believe in love because love is heaven. All the
Thank you.
things is going on,
Thank
we
you
are
so much
wasting
for
our
saying that.
time. Hmm.
Yes, yes, that's so important.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We've had quite a beautiful, differently abled network meeting, and we close now with Nellie Anderson singing From a Distance.
Okay. From a distance, the world looks blue and green, and the snow-capped mountains white. From a distance, the ocean meets the stream, and the eagle takes to fly. From the stars, there is harmony, and the echoes through the land. It is a voice of hope. It is a voice of peace. It is a voice of every man. From a distance, we all have enough, and no one is in need. And there is no God, no bombs, and all the seas, no hungry mouths to feed. From the stars, we are instruments marching in a common band, playing songs of hope, playing songs of peace. That is the song of every man. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from the distance. From a distance, you lose like my friend, even though we are at war. From a distance, yes, I cannot comprehend what all this fighting is for. From a distance there is harmony, and the echoes through the land. It is a hope, oh hope, it is the love, oh Lord, that is the song ever remain. There is a hope, oh hope, it is the love, oh Lord, that is the song that remain. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from the distance. God is watching us. God is watching us. God is watching us from a distance.
Wow, 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 wow. That was beautiful. And that's not easy to do a cappella. I know that wasn't easy to do. And you
Yeah,
sounded so great. If I was your child, if I was anyone that needed to restore my hope and to feel the warmth and comfort of another human being, I would love for you to, I love your voice. That voice
thanks.
is just fantastic. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so much for sharing. We
Sure.
thank you again for being part of the Differently Abled Network meeting, and we hope to see you again next month. Thank you so much for being here.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Everybody, nice meeting everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Shawnee Cotton, for being our guest today. Thank you, Dr. Jane Garcia.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks, everybody.
you.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Dawn. It
Thank
was
you,
nice
Doc
to meet
Apple.
you. Have a beautiful day.
Thank you, you too.
Thank
Okay,
you, Dr. Applewhite.
Thank you.
bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna say hi. You can say hi now. You can say hi, dude, Danita.
Huh?
Goodbye, London.